Well, let's stay with this story about German authorities who are expected to announce charges against former top executives of Steinhoff. The company has been accused of accounting fraud that's puzzled authorities here in South Africa and abroad. Well, here at home, the South African authorities have been accused of dragging their feet in charging some of the executives. The Justice Minister, Ronald Lamola, telling Parliament just yesterday that the National Prosecuting Authority is close to charging those involved. Well, joining us now is Sipho Ngwema. He is the spokesperson for the NPA. Mr. Ngwema, thank you very much for your time. I won't waste any of the time. Let's get straight into it. How far are the South African leg of investigations into the Steinhoff matter?
Thank you, colleague. Good morning. The investigation is proceeding well. As you know, that we are working with other law enforcement agencies, particularly the Hawks, in the investigation. We roped in Pricewaterhouse last year after having engaged them and acknowledging the amount of work that they have done. So that investigation or that cooperation with them and the forensic reports that we have received from them have helped a great deal, and therefore that investigation continues. As the previous speaker has said, it's quite a complex, intricate investigation, so it is really involved. So, but we are progressing well.
Yeah, you mentioned PricewaterhouseCoopers that you say is assisting you in investigating this. In October last year, Marcus Jooste alone was fined 161 million rand by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority alongside 3 other people. When you put these two together, the PricewaterhouseCoopers help that you are receiving from them, and then the FSCA, surely by now you should have at least gotten something concrete.
You must remember the standards for various authorities and disciplines and processes are different. Ours is a criminal investigation, of course, led by the Hawks, as it was mentioned, and we have the burden of proof beyond reasonable doubt against those who want to charge on various offences that we may be investigating. So others will reach their milestones earlier than others, depending on whatever information they're looking for, or depending on the standards in terms of their processes. Ours continues, particularly with regards to the criminal investigation. Even the forensic investigation that I said we had received, it's not the same standard as criminal investigation. Therefore, you need to use that as a base for you to be able to leave no stone unturned in your criminal investigation. But with all things being equal, we are continuing and the investigation is progressing. And I know that sometimes people tend to juxtapose investigations, even though they don't know the merits of the various investigations. Yeah. This one spans over 5 countries. It's about 11-year work that we are looking at between 2009 and 2017. So there's a lot involved. There's tons of papers and documents that the investigators are going through.
All right. Well, I suspect I have a reasonable apprehension about what it is that you're talking about when you say people tend to do a comparative study of cases. We're going to talk about that in a moment. For now, Sipho, I want us to have a listen to what the former National Director of Public Prosecutions, Bulelani Ngcuka, said to me last year when he was sharing his thoughts regarding the Steinhoff scandal, saying commercial crimes are more complex and they take time to investigate. Let's have a listen.
You know, the commercial crimes are very complicated and they take time to investigate. It's not as a simple matter like an assault charge, you know. you have to put up a team that has to investigate all these networks, and that takes time. I am uncertain that he will have his day in court. And again, that people must not be impatient, must give the Hawks the opportunity to put up a good case and not mess it up.
Sipho Ngwema, as much as you have some kind of backing from a former head of the institution you speak for, but you've got to admit it is embarrassing to have a foreign authority already moving ahead of us here when, in fact, we were the first to even fine this person millions of rand for what he did, because that should be evidence enough. What is the capacity of our prosecuting authority in investigating these crimes?
Look, as I said to you, particularly with the agreement that we reached with the forensic company in terms of assisting us with the forensic investigation, of course, there will never be enough in terms of everything that we want, but we think that we do have fairly adequate capacity to deal with this matter. And I think what we need to emphasize is that people will reach various milestones at various times, one, depending on what they are looking at, two, depending on the resources that they have put into the matter, and also depending on the complexity of the case before them. Are they looking only in terms of their jurisdiction, or they're looking all over? And how much evidence are they looking at? And I think I need to emphasize, there is no microwave approach when it comes to commercial investigations. We'll get there. And those who have to answer will answer. We don't have suspects at the moment. We are investigating transgressions, and those transgressions and evidence will lead us to suspects.
Well, the argument in Parliament yesterday, if you listened there, the criticism against you, the prosecuting authorities, is that you're dragging your feet on this matter simply because you have a white, moneyed businessmen or businessmen who are possible culprits in the biggest scam that has ever hit this country. The simple question is, how complicated can the Steinhoff crimes be versus those of VBS, for example?
Look, if you look at VBS, for example, it's fairly local. Everything was done largely within South Africa. So by and large, in as much as even that investigation is going to take time, because it's a complex commercial investigation, but everything happened in one jurisdiction. Here we are talking about more, or probably about 5 countries. You're talking about huge volumes of papers. And I know that it's easy for people who want to politicize these cases. For us, we want to do our work without favor, without influence, and we don't see color. We see people breaking the law. If they break the law, we follow the evidence, and then they must come and account in court. I know that it's easy for those, as I said, who want to politicize these things and put color and put political parties. For us, it's not about that. It's about following evidence that would lead you to a successful conviction of those who have broken the law. Yeah,
Sipho Ngwema, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you about a separate matter now, and that is that of the NPA case against ANC MP Bongani Bongo, which was dismissed by the Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe last week. What went wrong?
We are studying that judgment. We, of course, are disappointed. We noted what the judge had said, but we studying thoroughly with the view of deciding on the way forward. I think it would be premature of me to say anything now before those discussions have been concluded with regards to our way forward. We think that we may have options, but once we are done with that consultation, with that probing of that judgment, we should be able to come back to the nation to say this is our next course of action.
Mr. Ngwema, 2 witnesses of the prosecuting authority in that matter did not show up in court, which meant that you only had 1 witness, Advocate Ntutuzelo Vanara. Have you been able to establish the reasons for why they did not show up?
Look, Colin, to be honest with you, I'm not even aware of what you're talking about. When I was talking to our colleagues, and it's not a matter, it's a matter that is being dealt with in the Western Cape, but when I was talking to our colleagues, nothing would have turned on those small things, but the bulk of the case, all the witnesses that we needed to be before the judge were able to give the evidence that we needed at the time. So everything now points to us studying the judgment and to see whether or not it is a fair reflection of how things should be, or should the National Prosecuting Authority appeal. So once we have taken that decision, we should be able also to ventilate on some of the concerns we may have, if there are any, with regards to how the court, how the case proceeded.
Very briefly then for me, you've already said that you are studying the judgment. Does that mean that you plan to take the matter on appeal?
Look, I'll be preempting the conclusion of that discussion if I were to say this is what is going to be the culmination of that. And this is why people have to discuss, and then in the end, they must come with a bottom line, and the bottom line will be a way forward in terms of what is appropriate or most appropriate under the circumstances.
Sipho Ngwema, thank you very much for your time, sir. Speaks for the National Prosecuting Authority.